Most of us have heard someone in church talk about God's still small voice. It's become a cornerstone for how many Christians think God speaks to us. And you would think with how popular it is that it must be all throughout Scripture. But it's not. And it might not even mean what we think it does. Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, I'm Colin, the resident nerd and Bible scholar here at the Bible Uncut and Unfiltered. This phrase, the still small voice of God, shows up exactly one time in all of Scripture. Just once, 1 Kings 19:12. So let's talk about what's actually happening in this story. The prophet Elijah has just had this massive showdown with the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. Fire from heaven, dead prophets, the whole 9 yards. Typical Tuesday, right? Well, Queen Jezebel then threatens his life, and Elijah runs for the hills. Literally. He ends up on Mount Korev, hiding in a cave, feeling completely defeated. And God tells him to come out because he is about to pass by. First comes this great wind that tears the mountains apart, but God isn't in the wind. Then there's an earthquake, but God isn't in the earthquake. And fire, but God isn't in the fire. And then this mysterious phrase that we translate still small voice. Here's where it gets interesting though. The Hebrew phrase is kol damama daka. Let's break it down in reverse. Daka. That is a rare word that usually means thin or fine, like a fine fabric. It's related to crushing or grinding something into a very fine powder. In Psalm 93, a related form of this word is used with kol, the word for voice that we'll talk about in a minute, to describe the crashing sound of waves. That's kind of different from still and small. But what about the second word, damama? Well, that usually means silence, but some scholars actually connect it to an Akkadian root word that refers to the moaning of animals or human mourning. Not exactly what we'd call peaceful. And then that word, kol. This is where it gets really fascinating, because yes, kol can mean voice, but it's also the exact same word translated as thunder in every major English Bible. In Exodus 19:16, for example, when Israel is on Mount Sinai, this same word describes both thunder and the sound of a trumpet that they hear. So that leaves us with 3 possible translation choices for this phrase. The first being the traditional still small voice that we think of, the second being a deafening silence, or the third, the complete opposite of those, a crushing, thunderous sound. Now, before you dismiss option 3, remember what's happening here. Elijah has been in a theological battle with Baal, the Canaanite storm god. Baal was the thunder and lightning deity of that part of the ancient world. So when Yahweh doesn't show up in the wind, the earthquake, or the fire, elements associated with other gods, but potentially appears with the very thundery imagery used for Baal, it's making a point. Elijah gets the message. Yahweh is the real God here, not Baal. Look, I know many of you find comfort in the idea of God's still small voice. I did for many years as well. And if that's how you've experienced God, I am not trying to take that away from you. But here's what concerns me. If you grew up at all like I did, constantly being told to listen for God's whisper, the implied message was that you could easily miss him, and probably already had. That creates anxiety, not peace. Even if still small voice is the right translation, that is one verse describing how God spoke to one person at one moment 3,000 years ago. We have an entire Bible full of stories where God speaks in all kinds of ways. Burning bushes, through the mouths of donkeys, dreams, prophets, and yes, sometimes in quiet moments too. Don't limit God, though, to only speaking in whispers. At the end of the day, passages like this remind us to stay humble in our Bible interpretation. Any of these 3 options could be legitimate. The beauty isn't in having the exact right answer. It's in wrestling with the text and discovering that God is bigger and more mysterious than our translations sometimes let on. So, what do you think? Does this change how you read the passage? Let us know in the comments.